if I look at you as an entrepreneur, a creative, a sort of, somebody following their heart, following what's right. Bring me back to your past. We're talking childhood. What were you like as a kid, and how did this all of a sudden come to play?
Yeah, so as a child, I would be one of these kids that were not necessarily going to be a brain surgeon or a doctor. I was very creative. I had the gift of the gab, as they would say. So when it came to being able to pitch something or debate about something, I would be pretty good at that. But the academic side of things was I wasn't too strong in that because I had learning disabilities, like a lot of us had some sort of learning disability of some sort. I never was able to be the one that will win the spelling bee or any kind of things like that. But the one thing I did know is if you gave me something and you said, I need you to tell me about it and I need you to sell me on it, I could do that with my eyes closed. So I knew I had the gift of salesmanship. I didn't realize that at a time that it would be important as a kid, but I always wondered, well, why am I so convincing? I'm debating about a topic that I'll be honest with you, I probably didn't study about, but I knew a little bit about. And I was able to say, well, I can just wing this, but I can put it in a way where if I use my voice in a certain way, I probably can convince you that I studied. And that was what I pretty much did for the majority of my school years.
And yeah, what do you think? Where do you think that came from? This ability to all of a sudden be good at selling these ideas that you believed in.
Well, I grew up around a dad who was 24/7 salesman. Whether my mom liked it or not, my dad was selling her on things that she didn't even know she needed, and that could have been why they got married. Maybe he sold her on marriage, and maybe he sold her on, all kinds of things I don't know. But he was based around salesman. That was his life. It was sales. So when it was family, friends coming over for dinner, he would sell them on what they're having. Whether it's a simplistic plate of food, he was able to present it in a way that people would be like, okay, it doesn't taste good, but man, I really want it. And so I never realized the importance of presentation of oneself. My dad wasn't the smartest, person in any way, shape, or form, but he always had a presence about him that no matter what he was selling, you would want it. And it was one of these things where I started to realize that maybe I won't be able to go to university, maybe I won't be a college student, but what I can do is whatever I put my mind to, if it has to do with speaking and presenting myself, I will always be at the top. Because that's what my dad always said, you're not going to be a brain surgeon, but you could sell the tools to them easily. And that's what kind of pushed me continuously through this process of, even in this work of, philanthropy work and things like that, I'm not selling a product, I'm selling an opportunity, I'm selling a mission, a movement, an education, an experience. So whether I'm selling a product or whether I'm selling an idea, I always have the ability to be able to present myself in a way that makes it comfortable for people. Not in a way of forcing them to enjoy or like or want to be involved, but to the point where if I had to raise money, I'll raise that money. That's all I know. That's my innate ability is, this needs to be done, I'm going to get it done.
And like your dad has had huge success, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I was younger, my dad had a hair company. So our family is based around hair and beauty. So back in the day, the idea was it's like a vacuum salesman. Before there was social media, internet, all these kind of things like that, you had to take the product that you're selling to the door of each salon and convince them that this bottle of bubbles is different and better than another bottle of bubbles. Now in the hair industry, whether people who are listening or in the hair industry, this is reality. We are selling products that are bubbles in a bottle. Our labels are colorful. What's the difference? Why is it different? So when you're saturated in a market that's saturated with bubbles in a bottle, how do you stand out? My dad stood out every single time to the point where he, you know, built an empire, a monstrous hair care business, a hair beauty and salons and products and tools and combs and everything that you can think of, because his products weren't different from anybody in the realm of hair. It's how he presented himself and how he presented the product. So when I was younger, I used to go with him because he was, you know, watching me at the time. And I would sit in the salon lobby, unaware that what I'm listening to made a difference. I was too busy distracted by the TV or whatever, but I still heard everything. And he would present himself to the point where even I wanted to buy it. And I already had it. Like, I have this product. I own it. But yet I still want to buy it from him. And at every day I would work with him, I started working with him at a young age, learning how to do hair, selling, everything like that. And even when we were on tour, traveling the world, doing classes or trade shows or events, I would stand beside him and say to myself, I'm going to buy this, and I already have it. Like, to the point where you're selling a product that is no different than the person in the next room presenting. But yet the people in the next room are coming over going, I'll buy that. Even though you're a competitor, I want it. And that never changed to this day. He's, you know, in his, you know, I don't want to say late 70s, in his 70s, and he's still on the road selling a product that is not really too different, but presented in a way that the younger generation still wants it. You know, and so that's what I was raised on. Not, hey, you know, do your homework. He never asked me to do that. He said, sell me this. So screw homework. I don't need, no, don't do homework. How would you present this? And every day it would be something similar. Show me how you'd present this. How would you explain to someone what shampoo does or conditioner? He said, present it to me. Well, if this is the hair molecule and this is the hair, you put it together, the conditioner stays in, it won't leave. That's what the hair follicle does. And he's like, now sell it. Oh, okay. That's all I did, was proving to him that I could sell, because he knew eventually I would have to do it. And we did that. We traveled the world. Listen, I was selling products in a way that even in my own mind, I thought to myself, well, that's a bunch of BS. But you're loving it. Like, you want it. But that's where it kind of goes, that kind of fine line of honesty and salesmanship. And in some cases, for the majority of my life, it was complete sales. You know, honesty, whatever. If someone says, is this in it? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Like, will this do this to my hair? Sure, absolutely. I didn't know, but I had salesmen. And I continued on that line of salesmanship because I didn't know any better. Because honesty is not selling. Honesty is convincing someone otherwise. So if you added honesty and salesmanship together in some cases in the beauty industry that is saturated, they're going to go to someone that believes in salesman and not honesty. That's where I had, when I got older, I started to realize that I was even selling myself to my mom or my friends and not realizing that I'm not switching it off. And all of a sudden, salesmanship became BS, and BS became complete outlandish misinformation because I was continuously always on. And that affected relationships, that affected friendships, that affected everything but work. Because the problem was, people trusted what I was saying to the point where even if I lied, they would still buy it. And in the salesmanship mentality, that was success because I was making money. I was making so much money on the backbone of dishonesty because I was telling people what they wanted to hear. Will this help my hair grow? Absolutely. There's no such thing. It's not possible. This is internal, health. That doesn't, things that you put on your hair now does not make your hair grow. That's health. Will this make my straight hair curly after 2 washes? Sure. It's not possible. But I was put in a position where I had to sell a quota per day, per week, per month, per year. And then over time, that's where it got out of hand. And that's
was there a moment where you can remember where that line between the salesmanship and the honesty sort of like put a mirror to you, or was it a gradual process?
Yeah, it was, honestly, it was a gradual process, but I guess one of the biggest experiences I had was I was being caught on my lies. So there'd be moments where people would come to me saying, well, you said this would happen, or this was the outcome. And I said, well, I don't believe I did. But in fact, I did. So I was starting to slowly, trip over my own BS. I started to trip over my own dishonesty, salesmanship. And the one thing that my dad was very good at, he was very good at convincing people that they were wrong and I was right. So it got to the point where I started to gradually start tripping over my own BS and my own dishonesty. And it started to kind of backfire because I was saying things to one person and then I was saying things to another. And the problem with the hair industry is it's a small world. So if I say to one salon, this is what happens, and I say to something different to another salon, they're going to meet one day and they're going to correspond. And all of a sudden, I'm now in front of two salon owners that are saying two different things that I said, and then trying to convince them that they're wrong. And then I started to realize that I was losing clientele because there was some dishonesty and trust was being lost. And that's when I started to realize that I'm basing my presentation of myself on lies and dishonesty. And one day my mom said to me, she says, you're getting too much like your dad. And in some cases people would say, well, that's a positive. But in what she was saying is, you're even lying to me. I'm catching you on lies. And I wouldn't be really thinking about it because I'm already too busy presenting myself in a way that I want to be the best of the best. Because at a very young age, as you know, I wasn't going to be a brain surgeon. I'm not book smart. I'm a street smart individual. So all I had to go for me was my voice. So I would continuously sell on everything. And that was the problem, was as I started to be caught on my lies and dishonesty, and then it started to get problematic. And then I started to realize that I'm even lying to a woman who is my entire planet, my entire life, that even she's saying my dishonesty is actually starting to affect her. And that's when reality hit.
Wow. So how do you instill this honesty now in terms of what you approach and how you sell, and your life of entrepreneurship and what you've just what you get into? How does honesty play into what you do now?
Yeah, honesty is a big thing, and I also will say is when you're ingrained in your DNA to do this 24/7, you tend to still get caught. I'll still catch myself on saying something when I'm like, no, let's just be truthful here. Don't sugarcoat things for the sake of sugarcoating it. Be honest. And what I found was, in some cases, at the very beginning, going into the new realm of honesty instead of salesmanship, was I wasn't able to present myself as well as I thought because I was being truthful. I was saying, this is something that could work, but I don't know if it works for you. Now, the old me would say this works for you. But now, being honest, I would be very clear in saying this is something that may not work. I can't guarantee it. I'm not sure. I can get back to you. Let me look into it. Those are things that I would never say back in my dishonest sales days because that means weakness. Now, I am very vulnerable. I am not afraid to say, I don't know, but I can find out for you. Or let me look into that. Let me put you in contact with the right person. Or, maybe this is just not the best fit for you. Because now I know that whatever thing that I do now will affect someone's livelihood. and it could affect you in a negative and positive way. Back in the day, I never thought about that because it was bubbles in a bottle. What's the big deal? It's not going to affect your health. It's, it's vanity. But now, working in this kind of world of psychedelics, holistic healing, end-of-life care, dishonesty can affect and change that individual and family forever. So now, complete transparent honesty, not only with them, but myself and anybody that I work with or interact with, is I'm not going to tell you something that I don't know, because I don't want your livelihood to be affected by bubbles in a bottle, because that's not how that is now.
And in saying that, do you feel like, in experiencing it, do you feel that you do get less sales being honest? What do you think about that? How does that relate to the result and the money of things for you?
Yeah, so I'll speak on behalf of psychedelics. In this world, just like cannabis, everyone is a cannabis producer. Every corner of the earth there's one. So you're obviously in a very saturated market. Psychedelics are the same. Anybody can have a psychedelic business. It's not unheard of. But how do you stand out from every single other brand out there? And what we do is very simple. It's honesty. Now, when someone is speaking with us saying, I've never taken this before, will I react negatively? Well, the first thing we would say is if that's a question that you're asking yourself now, it's not a good time to start. You have to be in a mindset that you're able to say, whether it's good or bad, I'm prepared for that. But if you're questioning the bad, we have to inform you that that's not the right move. Now, obviously that will affect money because I just lost a sale. But at the end of the day, you're going to be known for being honest and truthful. For when the time comes for that individual to re-buy, they're going to think of you instead of someone that says, yeah, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, here's a list of Googled things that you can do. Because the biggest thing now is I'm selling a product, or I'm educating people on a product that you take internally that in some cases potentially could affect you in a negative way. And I have to realize that back in the day, I was selling a product that was vanity on the outside that doesn't necessarily affect your life in any way. It's just a product that you waste money on. Now, if you neglect the path of honesty in this kind of space, there's a potential for long-term problems, but also long-term health issues in the family and individual taking it. So obviously the money in this space is completely, gigantically less than bubbles in a bottle. But the impact and the journey that you can create for somebody in a tough time is worth more than any money in the world, because you're affecting someone's not only present existence, but potentially future and the next journey after life. And I will never present myself in this space the way I presented in the salon, because I potentially could deter you from a very spiritual experience that will be able to help you down the road and in an end of life as well. So it's two different ways of thinking. One has a ton of money involved, but you're literally dying inside because you know what you're doing is wrong. And then there's one here where it is financially hard and you're probably not going to make a lot of money, but the impact you have on someone's life and their family outweighs all of this. So it's definitely difficult because we have to pay bills and we have to survive in this world that is an ever-challenging, ever-changing economy. So having money helps. But at the end of the day, if I take the mentality of the past into the present, I will make money, but there's a potential for me to affect someone's life in a negative, and I can't, that's not me anymore. And that's why I'm no longer in the hair industry, because I decided that I was doing more harm to people that I cared about then I was succeeding. And at the end of the day, that's when reality hit me. When somebody that you love so much says, you know, I'm going through cancer right now, and you're lying to me. Like, even you're lying to me, who is your mom. I know you're lying. And I know you're coming out as a salesman, just like your dad. When that starts to affect her in a negative way, that was the reality of life. Was I'm basically being told by a person in my life that is going through chemo that I'm trying to pitch her on something that I didn't even know. That's when it hit me.
Wow. So I can see this like veering of the illusions and then this like falling into honesty and being transparent with yourself. And where does it turn where you start to do things that really matter to you as opposed to selling something you don't believe in? And yeah, that's one question I have for you. I have another one, but let's start there.
Yeah, so I guess it kind of all began when my mom was first diagnosed with cancer. And I'm at the hospital, the doctor's there. They said, you know, she has terminal cancer. It's not good. It's life ending. My first innate spark in my brain was, how much money will it take to cure cancer? How much money do I have to give to the doctor to stop this from happening? That was my first thought, not the thought of my mom's well-being and her health and her mental health. My first thought was, I have money, I can solve problems with money, therefore this is another problem that I can solve. And the moment I went to the doctor and I said, listen, I know it's bad, but what can I do financially to put her at the top of the list for, you know, for research, experiments, all these, what can I do? And he says, well, you can't. And I said, yes, but I can. I have the ability to do this. How much money will it take to put her above the list of everybody else to get the experimental treatment? And he said to me very clearly, and this is what changed my life, he says, your mom's gonna die, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's when it clicked. It made me realize that I was putting emphasis on money instead of happiness and health and well-being. And the problem is that transparency was never something that I ever was given. I never really was given a transparency when it came to a relationship with my dad or in business. It was always very foggy. So when I started to get the realization of transparency is when that doctor says, she's going to die and there's nothing you can do about it. All of a sudden, the frosted glass of the window became clear, and I looked outside into the world going, holy cow, that's different. I've never seen through this window before. That's what transparency is. That's what honesty is. And that's what reality is. And in that moment, I realized that I was doing life wrong. My concept of life was completely fogged by money, success, attention, greed. I never saw transparent honesty before until that doctor looked in my eyes and said, there is nothing, absolutely nothing you could do to change the fact that your mom won't be here very much longer. And that's when I started to realize I was literally on the wrong train. I was on the train of vanity, of greed, of all these things like that. I got on the wrong train. I went to the wrong station. I was supposed to be on the station of transparency, of honesty, of trust and truth and love and care. I got on the wrong train because I was brought to the station by someone that I trusted. In fact, I should have went to the other station with the individual that I knew would put me on the right path. And that's when I realized that I got to get off of this train and I got to walk all the way back to the station and start again. And that's what I did. I completely started again.
Wow, I'm touched by that story, Ross. I feel, I got chills listening to that. Yeah, clearly like this dropping into reality and acceptance. and then from there, really getting a look on where you're going to head next. It's beautiful. Wow. So where did you go next?
So I basically went sort of to use kind of the spiritual kind of mentality, where it was Saint Francis of Assisi was an individual that had great wealth and started to realize that he was living a life of hedonism, and he stripped off all his clothes and he walked into the world naked, which meant that he was reborn, recharged, reinstated, rebuilt, and of a path of love over lust, greatness over greed, compassion over cash, memories over money, things like that. And so what I did is the only way that I could truly engulf myself into this world is I had to go back to my mom. I had to go back to her. I had to be more with her. I had to not necessarily be a caregiver, but I had to be present with her throughout this journey. Because the only way I'm going to get the reality of life is by witnessing life disappear. That's just how that was. And at that same time, I knew that I had to dive even further into the world of what am I missing? What have I neglected? What have I drove by? What have I put my blinders on? And that was when I started working more in the community with the homeless, with addictions, with mental health, is because I always had my blinders like a racehorse. As you know, with racehorses, the whole focus of these blinders is to focus on the finish line, not the other horses. So in life, I neglected those individuals panhandling, asking for help, asking for money. I neglected those people who were dying on the streets because my sole focus was money. So now I took the blinders off and started to realize that I was neglecting a world that potentially could utilize what I had and what I experienced and what I knew. So I knew that if I could take the mentality of presenting myself to charities, to organizations, to social enterprises, maybe I can help them raise more money. Maybe I can help them gain more attention. And so I started working more in the communities to start to realize, saying like, this story needs to be told. And what you're doing is maybe not presenting it in a way that is appealing to people. So I started working in these communities as a voice, as a cover of the book, saying like, listen, let me try to present this in a way that maybe this will draw in some funding. But in the same time, I started to realize that the funding was not necessarily in any way, shape, or form the real goal. It was the visibility. We are living in a society then and now that if we see something negative, we automatically assume that that will hurt us. Or if we see someone in pain, we may have to do something, but we don't want to. And that was my life. Back in the day, I was, don't give someone money because they might buy drugs. I was assuming that I knew what this individual would do with money, when in fact it had nothing to do with money. It was visibility. So one day I sat beside someone who was holding a cardboard sign that said, spare any change, things like that. And I witnessed from on the ground, looking up to individuals as they walked by, just like myself, the complete lack of visibility, ignored every bit of it. Even myself, who was wearing normal clothes, you'd like to think that they would see someone like me sitting down going, well, why is he sitting on the ground? But still, automatic blinders, they walked right by. And I asked this individual, I said, well, what is the point of the sign? And he said to me, he says, it has nothing to do with money. I just want someone to see me. And that's when I realized that we are walking in this world of blinders, that potentially we think we can't help people with the skills that we have. But at the end of the day, whatever skill that you have is something that organization needs. If you're an accountant, well, they need help with taxes. You may think that your skills as a carpenter wouldn't be able to help anybody, but shelters need maintenance. There might be a low-income family that needs their kitchen fixed. These are skills that we have. Every 8 billion people on this earth have a skill that when we were born, it was ingrained in us, which is humanity. All of us have the ability to change someone's life. And I'm not saying to change the world, but change the world for somebody We all have the innate ability to do that with the skills that we have currently. But we are so blinded by what we're seeing or not seeing that we think we can't make a difference, and it takes money. It's not money, it's visibility. Charities don't want your money per se, they just want you to know that they are there. So one day when you have money, you can donate, but it's not about money. So I learned a lot about myself by presenting myself for these organizations on behalf of them as a way of, I'm not asking you for money. I want you to look at me, hear what I have to say, and you then go by judgment of what happens after. And all of a sudden things started picking up. And that's when the fentanyl crisis started to happen. We were witnessing people overdosing from 7 a day to 20 to 100 a day were overdosing on fentanyl. And it had nothing to do with money. It was the fact is, it was the visibility. We need to bring attention to this. And I was able to do that in some ways of bringing attention to the city, to societies, to individuals who were fully unaware of this was even happening because we ignore it. So the best way that we do in this world and in this space right now, especially what I'm doing now, is I'm not trying to present a product for you to buy that looks good. It's about visibility. It's about understanding. It's about not the product, but the meaning behind it. When we remove meaning from our daily life, we're out. We're done. You give up. If there's no meaning to what you're doing that could change someone's life in a positive, when you remove the ability of the mission being a meaningful experience, there's no hope. And that was the problem with salesmen of my past, was I didn't have a meaning. Mine was greed. There was no meaning to it. It was a revolving, mindless, numbing sales pitch. That was it. There was no meaning. But when you remove that and you create a journey of meaningful experiences and memories, you can change the world for someone.
Right. And it seems to me like hearing you, it's like this your natural ability, your gift of communication was like you said, on the wrong train, a meaningless train, and then all of a sudden you get on the right train, and now you can use your gift, but there's fulfillment in it.
Yeah.
Where did so you had this experience with your mom. Where sort of guide me to, how did you navigate where life needs you and your voice, your gift? How did you navigate that?
Yeah, it was tough because, my mom passed away in 2017, of a lengthy battle with cancer, and I was so proud of her. She did such a wonderful, job, and very powerful. In her words, she actually defined cancer. Cancer didn't define her. She actually proved that if you are given 2 years, you can do 10. So throughout that process of losing someone like that, I lost myself at the same time. Not a lot of people know, but when I was walking to my mom's house from my house in Vancouver, there was a bridge, and I would have to walk that over and over again to go back to her house, get her stuff, back and forth. Every day I thought about jumping off that bridge. I thought to myself, there is no meaning to my life anymore. I don't have a reason to be here when I don't have the person that really actually saw the real me and still loved me for even the hedonistic person. She still saw that young boy in me. So what was it? What was the reason for me to be here? And every day I would go back and forth, and I would always think to myself, this is the day that I jump, because there is no meaning. But I never did it. And it wasn't the fact where I was hearing the voice of God or anything like that. It was the voice of my mom saying, it's not time yet. And it was, you're not done. Now, that could have been my own mindset saying it to myself, but at this time I was continuously changing my mindset on doing this. And one day I was walking back and forth to this bridge, and I thought to myself, this is it, I'm going to do it, no problem. And then I met this homeless guy at the end of the bridge, and he was saying, could you help me? And I thought to myself, well, I could barely help myself, but what can I help you with? And they said, well, I really need some food, but they won't let me in. I've been going there too many times, and they don't let me in because I've had some issues with the person in the store, and I'm just really hungry. And I said, well, I don't have any money. And he says, well, I just want food. So I was like, okay, well, let me figure something out. And so I went into the store. I said, listen, the gentleman outside, I'm here to buy him some food. No, we're not going to give him food. He'll never come back. He'll always come back. We don't want him here. He's trouble. And something in my brain snapped and thought to myself, well, I need to represent him in a way that they will provide him with food. I said, I don't know him, but I know that he needs help. So I was able to talk to the storefront individual and say, listen, you have the ability to provide this individual with food that you're not going to sell, that you're going to throw away. At the end of your night, you should be able to present this individual and every individual that's hungry outside your store with food that you're not going to use. It will not cost you a thing because you've already removed your profit margin. So give him a sandwich. Somehow something clicked, and he gave him a sandwich. And apparently he started doing that for the rest of the time I knew that storefront. Every night they would leave out food. And it was because the way it was done is I found a way of saying, you want profit? Well, you won't lose profit because this is waste. You actually collect that back. It's called waste management. So at the end of the day, you're literally throwing away potentially the ability to help someone. So why don't you just leave it outside and allow them to have it? Because at the end of the day, you're going to write this off as waste anyway, so you're still making a profit. Mm-hmm. And he was like going, oh, that's right. I do write it off. That is waste that I get back. Okay, I'll leave it. And that individual, over months and months and months, started to do more and more to the point where he was leaving out a little bit of a mini fridge that he would have in there that people could go by and take. Because I was presenting this individual in a way of not only needing help, but presenting it in a way that you're actually still going to make your profit. Because I took a bit of sales, a bit of meaning, and I put it together, and I educated this individual on, you are all about money. This is how you can keep your money, but you're also going to create something meaningful to help someone in need. So it tickles your ego. At the end of the day, if you have a storefront and one cup of coffee has great coffee, okay. The next bag is great coffee, $1 from each bag goes to the homeless shelter. We live in a world where our mind will automatically go to the dollar one that goes to the homeless shelter because we want to help people without the ability of doing it. So we're buying something that helps someone without me technically having to do it myself. And that's what society is in some cases, is we're rather buy a product knowing that it's helping someone than actually going to a shelter and helping someone. So I put it in a way where you're helping someone, you're making profit still, and your ego is being tickled that you can say you help someone. And that's how I did it. I went to people like that. I did with organizations and charities. I made it to the point where someone would say, well, what do I get for my $1,000? Well, you get your tax deductible receipt, and then you could tell your friends that you donated $1,000 to a shelter, and then all of a sudden your ego is in, and then now you're seen as a good guy, and then all of a sudden the ladies like you, and then all of a sudden, and it was a revolving door of basically providing him with the ego that he needed to be able to give. And that's where salesmanship came in handy with philanthropy was, if I can find a way of getting into the sole purpose of your life, which is money, and make it that you can actually make money and also get that ego touch that you're donating, all of a sudden it becomes easy. And that's why a lot of companies now will say donate by buying, because you're going to get to be able to have the product that you want, but then also you're giving something in return without doing it, so therefore you get what you want, plus someone sees that you donated without actually doing it. Amazing. And I think a lot of charities and organizations are all about donate because you want to make a difference in this world, which is exactly what it should be. But we live in a society where, okay, I'll give you $1, but what do I get in return? What do I get? Oh, a meaningful experience that you help someone. But what else? Okay, a free T-shirt. Okay, I'll donate because you
Mm.
get something.
Yeah.
That's the problem right now is meaningful experiences and meaningful memories is not enough. We want something physically in return. And it's a shame that charities now have to become an online store to be able to sell something which is meaningful experience and help because we're not willing to donate without something in return.
Yeah, so you're able to see sort of the whole playing field of these of the entrepreneur, the store owner and his
Mm-hmm.
selfish desires, as well as how you can fulfill that for him in a way that the 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 homeless person also gets what they want. It's beautiful. I can see, and it's interesting how like you seem to gravitate towards the people that are in the most hard in the hardest conditions. They're like in the deepest of pains, and I'm curious as to like, yeah, what drives you to go there. A lot of people, they'll solve a little problem of getting somebody from point A to point B, and that's enough of a problem, and that's fulfilling enough to solve that problem for that person to get a ride. But you're going to the deepest of pains of homelessness and drug addiction. Yeah, what drives you to go that deep, or to go to those people specifically?
Yeah, so there's two stories that I will briefly say that is basically what brought me to what I'm doing now. The first one was, as in Vancouver, living in the downtown east side, which is where the heart of the global issue of addictions and mental health is. One day I was walking by and I saw this girl hunched over on the street. I saw that she had track marks, so she was obviously utilizing some sort of injectable drug of some sort. My first thought was, just keep walking, because in your mind you're always told just keep walking, right? But something told me to stop. And when I went by and I looked at her and I said, are you okay? Because, you're hunched over, there's some sort of reason why you're there. Are you okay? When she looked up, I realized that it was the girl I went to prom with. It was the girl that had everything. She had a bright future. She was the high school, she still is continuously beauty, like pure beauty. And I realized that when you had this individual who had everything, what happened? And it was because she met someone that got her into drugs and it clicked, and that was it. So you have someone that had literally the dream life of success that potentially everyone would want to, become, all of a sudden now on the streets, addicted to a very strong, life-changing, life-ending drug. When I saw that, I thought to myself, there is no one in this world that is immune to this. This could happen to everyone. And if it can happen to her, it can happen to me, my mom, my dad, everybody. All it takes is one pill, one injectable, and one bad human that educates you on this. And that's it. And that's what really, really took me to the point where, who else potentially do I know that is here that could be helped or supported or spoken for on behalf of their voice, And that's what really took me to that point. Another really profound experience was, there was a guy I grew up with who was my big brother. He was my stepbrother. I knew him since I was a baby. We grew up together. We were raised together. He was my role model. He was the guy that I wanted to be. I would dress like him. I would want to be just like him. And one day I got a phone call that he was in trouble, that he, had some addictions. He was addicted to fentanyl. He was going into rehab, but it wasn't going very well. And so I was wanting to be more present with him. Hey, listen, if you want to exercise, we can go to the gym together. If you want to get more healthy, we can do this together. Let's really work together. And he was on the right path. He had a lovely daughter and a lovely family, and he was doing so well. And then in 2019, I got the phone call that they found him OD'd, and unfortunately passed away on this couch due to a dirty supply of fentanyl. Now, this individual would never go to the point where he would overdose, because he knew he had a new beginning. He had a daughter, he had a wonderful life, but he had an addiction that he was working on. It wasn't the drug that killed him. It was the dirty supply that he got that had something in it that caused him to overdose. When I heard that message and call, I realized that it's not about the label of addiction. It is about what's in it, what's in the products. Why are we seeing people overdose deaths increasing dramatically when this drug has been around for so long? What changed? And it was the ability and research to find that these things were being cut with products that were killing people because it was cheap. It would be able to make it cheaper to make. People are dying not from heroin, but from what was cut inside, the dirtiness of it. It was the dirty supply, not the clean supply. He died realizing that he potentially was taking a product that was going to kill him. It wasn't the same product that he always had, that he was utilizing. It was something that was dirty. And that put me to the point where I said to myself, there has to be a way that we can educate people in a safe manner, that if you're going to take a drug, we need to test it and give you the ability to decide for yourself. Now, if we test the drug, like they do in Vancouver, you can take it to a clinic, they test it for you, they show there's caffeine, there's benzodiazepine, there's fentanyl, whatever. At least you know that the product that you are about to inject could be unsafe and deadly. But we want to be able to give you the choice to make that decision. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people who are addicted is because they were forced to do something, and that pushed them to addiction and comfort of that. So it got to the point where we wanted to do something in a way that we would allow them to have the education possible to make the decision for themselves. People are dying every day in this country from overdoses, not from the product that was been around since Sigmund Freud. It's because whatever they're using to cut it to make it cheaper is killing them. We need to be able to allow people who are using the ability to make the conscious decision to either take it or not. We're not trying to stop it. Now, it's just like a parent saying, don't smoke. Well, I'm going to smoke because you said not to. If we can educate individuals who are using that the potential drug that you're about to inject may cause you to end your life, you make the conscious decision. And in some cases, when we allow them to make the conscious decision that this is what's inside of the product, they make the choice not to take it. And maybe that's the road of cleanliness or rehab, because they're starting to realize and see on paper that this is what's inside of this. And I don't want that. But no one tested things back in the day because we didn't know how to do it, nor did we think it was important. So that's why I'm an advocate for harm reduction and supporting these organizations. That how can we educate people that donating and being able to provide a safe way of testing will help? Because if it can help someone who was my prom date and provide and prevent an overdose death from my big brother, then we are changing the way that we see addiction. Now we're giving a choice back to the people that had no choices.
I love it. It's like a return to the transparency you were talking about.
Yes.
With the
yes.
the old you and the old products of bubbles, and now you're like, no, we need to be honest in showcasing what's actually there. It's a great circle,
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. How did you detach yourself from money and really focus on on the heart of the matter?
Hmm. Well, I think the first step I had to do was find my true I am. And some people may not know what that means, but there is a wonderful historical guru out there whose name is Sri Ramana Maharshi. And it was, he passed away, but it was in the early 1900s. He came up with a concept of my true I am. Who are you truly, the being that you are? When someone says, I want to be this person, well, who's asking the question? Well, I am. Okay. I want to quit drinking. Well, who's asking the question? I am. I want to do this. Who's asking the question? I am. When you pinpoint your true I am, you start to realize that detaching yourself from things that make no difference in your life, worldly possessions, materialistic things, that's when your true I am becomes clear. Now, that was difficult for me because at the time, you need to be able to pay bills, and money was my main priority. I was successful. But we do know over time is when you work in a space like mine, which is end-of-life care, you start to realize the importance of memories, not money. We do know that when someone says, when the Egyptians used to take all this gold into the next life, and you find out thousands of years later that that gold is still there, it symbolizes that they never took it with them. So therefore, the emphasis on gold really didn't actually help you on your journey to heaven. Had nothing to do with it. There's no baggage claim in heaven. There's no bags allowed. There's no checked bags in heaven. When you realize that people who are going through the end-of-life process would say to themselves, I wish I did more with family and not with money. I wish I bought my family more things instead of myself. I wish I spent more time, less time on money. You realize when you're interacting with these individuals that literally have seconds to live in this world, that they are actually telling you that money actually caused them harm than good. That's the eye-opening experience that you need. At the end of the day, if you can live a humble life and create opportunities of happiness in your life with the minimalistic things, that's success. At the end of the day, we know that it is not how much money you have in the bank that keeps you alive. It's the memories that you make. Rich people, people who are millionaires, billionaires, will never be remembered for longer than a year because they've done nothing to change a memory. Those who affect people in a positive way, like a ripple in a pond, will be remembered forever. We remember the people in our lives that have passed by the memories that they created with us, not by how much money they gave us on our birthday. My grandma, my grandpa, all these individuals, I never, ever once remembered how much money they gave me for my birthday. But I remember the experience of my birthday. That's the true sign of wealth. Now, we have to pay bills, absolutely. But if you can pay bills in a way that it is the basic necessities of life, without the extravagant needs of extra things and extra materials, and your ability to be able to take care of yourself and your family and focus solely on your family's happiness and health and your health and well-being, then there's no problem. I had everything. I had everything I could ever imagine. I had all the money that I could ever imagine. I had whatever I wanted. I could do whatever I want. And the only thing I wanted was my mom not to die, and I couldn't stop it. And I focused so much on how much can I make to change the fact that my mom will die. I couldn't. But what I do know is her and I spent the last 10 years of our life enjoying life. That's wealth. That's a legacy. A legacy to me is memories, not money, and being able to give someone the meaning of belonging. If I can say, I honestly could say, I was speaking to someone the other day and they said, what is your meaning of a legacy? My meaning of a legacy is if I'm, in the ground and they're coming to my funeral and there's 100 people there and they all said, well, we knew his name, but we didn't know a lot about him. But what we do know is he individually gave us the meaning of belonging. That is success.
So that's great. That's great, Ross. So you mentioned Maharshi.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Alexander. Who is this? A saint or?
Saint Francis of Assisi.
Oh, Saint Francis.
Yeah.
How did you come to Saint Francis? Was he an earlier sort of introduction to you?
Yeah, so, you know, part of my work now is obviously I'm a hospice chaplain, pastoral care person, all that kind of spiritual care practitioner. You know, listen, I don't look like the individual that should be a pastor because I'm covered in tattoos, and obviously I don't have the background of complete celibacy and living in a monastery somewhere. But what I did have was the ability to know that at the end of the day, when we truly understand history of theology, we start to realize that there's some things that we're missing, or some things that we're misreading, or some things that we're misunderstanding because we are being told certain things without actually having the knowledge. St. Francis of Assisi was one of these individuals that I came across through my theology studies about questioning myself. Obviously there's so many saints out there, there's so many profound people, that are out there, St. Francis of Livrel, and there's all these saints out there that are profoundly prominent in our lives, that came from complete isolation or complete uniqueness of devotion to God without any issues. They were just so devoted. And I thought to myself, that wasn't me for the majority of my life. There has to be a way that I could relate to somebody in theology or in the Bible that will make me feel like I'm still on the right path. And I was just scrolling through theology textbooks, and I came across St. Francis of Assisi. First of all, the word Assisi, I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. It was just like, what an interesting word, and what an interesting place. And then I started to read more about him, where he came from the ability of having wealth and success, and his family was telling him that this is your life now. You will be married, you will have wealth, and you will have everything that you can ever dream of. So very similar to my life, where if you do this, you have everything you want, you continue on this path, you will be successful, and you will continue, you have everything you want. But there was something in his story that really stood out, where he was walking back to his, house or his villa, and he saw someone with leprosy. And at that time, during the historical time of the Bible, leprosy was, like, wow, that's, don't get near anybody that's with leprosy, because that could be transmitted, and that's it. So when you were a rich person, that was someone where you literally just ran away from. Something in his heart said, I need to help this person. I need to be present with them. And the only way I can do that is by stripping myself of all my worldly possessions to dive deeper into that. Now, obviously, there was a coming of God, there was prayers and things like that, but I could relate to him knowing that I was ingrained in my DNA to be this person, whether I liked it or not. But I knew there was something in my life that I was missing. And the only way I can do that was stripping myself off of the past and walking into the world in front of everybody completely naked. And that's what he did. He stripped off all his worldly possession, his robes, all his wealth and gold, and he walked into the world in front of the township completely naked. They thought he was crazy. They thought he'd lost his mind. But what in fact is he actually didn't lose his mind. He found it. He found his true purpose. When someone says you've lost your mind, we always make the assumption that people losing their mind, have they gone crazy? But what we don't realize is, in fact, you actually found it. But in society, we've never seen that before. And that's where that true I am is. You're living a life of I. I own this, I. The true I am was always neglected. Same with Assisi. He was living a life of I. I own this, I have this, I. And then all of a sudden he found his true I am through Christ and through prayers. And he stripped everything off and he walked into this world not of someone who'd lost his mind, but someone who has found it. And that's what I did. It took me my whole life, the loss of my mom, the loss of friends, the loss of myself, to truly find my true I am. And I can honestly say that each second of my breath is a gift that I never neglect. And if it was my last breath right now, I could truly say that I've accomplished everything that I could ever dream of.
So How do you feel now compared to the old you before? Let's say that was selling hair product stuff, you know? How do you feel in your body compared to that person before?
For me, I would say it makes sense. Everything makes sense. And I would say before before this moment of, yeah, it makes sense. It truly makes sense. I didn't understand any of it. I was like, I couldn't make the sense of it. I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing, what everything else, like, what is this? Now I can truly say that I can look in the mirror and I can say to myself, this makes sense. That's it. It's so
I
simple.
love that.
It makes sense. Yeah, that's it. That's the greatest line I tell myself. I wake up and go, this makes sense. And that's it. And everything else after that makes sense.
Amazing, amazing. When you are faced now, your journey has brought you to the extremes of pain, suffering, to witness it, not only did you find, turn inwards and start to question the I, and have a role model like a saint that seems to have a very similar path than you. But what was the? I know you touched on this a little bit, but now that you're dealing with people that are facing death, I think that's a unique experience that not many people. I've had 3 experiences with death, that were there, and now you're faced with this on a regular basis. What comes out of that for you? I mean, when you can face death, and a lot of philosophers, talk about this, like Stoic philosophy of, hey, get up in the morning and realize that you're going to die today. How has your experience shaped you in terms of dealing one-on-one with people with death, and how it's impacted your life?
Yeah, so when someone said, like, a great question, like, so when someone says, after experiencing death with someone, what do you get out of it? And I get out of it life. We are all going to die one day, and we don't know when. And that's the problem. It's not the fear of where I'm going, it's the fear of when. When you remove and detach yourself from the feeling of, I don't know when, life becomes so beautiful. And that's what a lot of it, the problem is when someone is diagnosed with a terminal illness, the first question they ask is, how long do I have? When will I die? Not, is it painful, or, what's the prognosis, like, what's the actual meaning? It's, when will I die? How long do I have? Now, obviously, when you're going through a terminal illness, you can't say to them that, we don't know. Because at the end of the day, we are so ingrained in our mind that we need a timetable. We need to know. Like birth, we have sort of a rough idea when you're born. You're probably about 2 weeks away, or maybe 48 hours. We have a timetable. So we're always told that there has to be a timetable in life. Well, when is your meeting? At 2 o'clock. What time's dinner? 5 o'clock. Where are you going? Here. When you get back? Then. There's a timetable in life. For me to say to someone, you're gonna die, and you will not know when, there is no timetable, there is no preparedness, there is no way of you preparing or understanding when. It shocks the system. But when you witness death, it's actually a very beautiful thing, because you're starting to realize that when you remove the feeling of, I'm about to die, and just being present with someone, their life doesn't seem that bad at the time. Now, that's the hardest thing for people now, is what we're trying to educate, and how I talk with people is, you will die, but you don't know when, and that bothers you, because you need to know every ounce of your life. Because if you don't know on how to control and dictate your life, then you're doing life wrong. how can you say to someone, throw away your timetable of your spiritual and mental and physical timetable and just be? Well, I can't do that. How do I? No, 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 no. I need to know. And that was the biggest thing for me is when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, when she said they're giving her 2 years, in my mind, I said to myself every day, I have 2 years left in my mom. I have 2 years left. I have 2 years left. And then it was getting close to 2 years, and then she did it a little bit longer, and then so on. You have maybe a year to go. There was a timetable that was continuously in both of our lives was, we think you have another year. Okay, well, let's live this year up. Oh, no, you've lived longer. All of a sudden, it's 10 years. So all of a sudden, your timetable of end of life has changed, and you don't know when. And she's living her life knowing that, well, they said 2, and I've done 4, so how much longer? And all of a sudden, she removed the thought of, well, I'm just going to live without a timetable, and when I die, but I'm not going to stop living. That is what changed my life, is working with these individuals, was you were diagnosed with a terminal illness. There is no timetable. You will die from this, but at the end of the day, when you put a timetable in front of it, you are not only killing yourself, but you're killing people around you. Death is not scary. The fear of not knowing is scary. That's the problem. So remove that. So when you remove a timetable of when you will die, you all of a sudden live life better. Because there's no timetable. Because let's be honest, we see in the world right now, everybody, you see someone who is healthy, who has money, who is rich and famous, drop dead. It's like, whoa, that they probably had a timetable that they were going to live until 90. You know, my mom had a timetable that she wanted to live until 70, but she didn't make it. And I always thought to myself, did that thought of not making it to 70 affect how she died? And she's like, I failed. I didn't make it to 70. So if you put a timetable on your life, like I want to make it another year with my family, well, what happens if you don't? Is that going to just destroy the life that you have with your family, the moments that you have? Or are you just going to live going, I don't know when, I will die, but I'm not going to let it stop me. And that was the biggest thing for me, and for working with individuals, was don't put a timetable of when you will die. Just experience life. And you'd be surprised how much longer you'll live.
That's great. And I can't help but think that, when you do psychedelics, one of the things for me personally that I've experienced is a abolishing of time. Right? Like when I'm on a mushroom trip, it totally just takes all time construct out of the experience, and just like totally drop into the present moment.
Of course. Yeah. And that's the thing, our mind right now, we are ingrained and created to add blockages in our brain of thoughts or feelings. And in some cases, we're actually neglecting ourselves from living because we're blocking ourselves from living. Psychedelics removes that wall and allows us to put everything together like a puzzle. That's the thing with psychedelics, is the puzzles fit perfectly. Now in life, if you are like a kid, you look at a puzzle, you have one piece left, and that piece doesn't fit. What do? Well, you smash it in there because you want it to complete. So what we do is we smash things into our brain and our livelihoods because we want it so badly. Like we want it. No matter if it doesn't work or not, I'm going to smash this puzzle piece into the wrong spot because I just want to be complete. Psychedelics allows you to actually think, that doesn't work there, I'll put it here. So it allows you to guide yourself through your life in a way that you're calm and understanding and patient. And that's the biggest thing, especially with end-of-life care, is we're not trying to remove the fear of death. We're trying to give you the patience to really find the pieces that were missing and put it into place. That you're not, in a way, fearful of what's next. And every research that we do through Johns Hopkins and anything like that is, they come back with a feeling of knowing where they're going and what they're experiencing. Now, when you give people the comfort of knowing what that journey may entail, you're less fearful because you know. With opioids and these SSRIs that are numbing the depression side of death, I always thought to myself, when my mom was on fentanyl, she was completely comatose. Was that fentanyl preventing my mom from seeing God? Was that preventing her from having an actual journey of new birth in a positive manner? And I always thought to myself, is there a way that we can help people through that process in a positive way? And that's psychedelics. You know?
There's something that's just coming to me, is just this, that's been a thread throughout your life, is this illusion and transparency.
Yes.
And whether it was in the products and now the disguise of these SSMR, these kind of pharmaceuticals that is showing you again an illusion,
Mm-hmm.
and then the honesty of the psychedelics to show you reality has been a thread that I'm seeing, you know?
Yeah. I guess so. I've never thought of that, but that's very true. Yeah, because it is true. It's, we're selling people with opioids or pharmaceuticals a false experience, but with psychedelics, it's honest, it's transparent. And hopefully the people that are providing it are also honest and transparent. No offense to pharmaceutical individuals and pharmacists, they are doing what they are told to do, is to provide a product that has a solution for this, a headache, a backache, migraines, whatever. We're selling you on the product and the solution. But are we selling them on the side effects, the harmfulness, what's really inside, what experience you may have or may not have? We sell you on the label. With psychedelics, we are transparent. We are not selling you. We are educating you on what the experience could happen, what may not happen, what negative could happen, what positive could happen, how much to take. And at the end of the day, it may not be right for you. So we're not going to sell it to you or present it to you. Could you imagine a world of transparency? I don't think we could ever imagine what a world of transparency would be when someone would say, like for us, when we work in an end-of-life care space with pastoral care, when we're going to a family or an individual, it could be a child, it could be an adult, it could be a senior, we're telling them up front, transparency, you are dying. This is the reality of it. As transparent as possible, with compassion, you are dying, but that doesn't mean that you need to stop living. In some cases, people would just say you're dying and there's nothing I can do about it. But you have to give them that feeling of transparency and hope. And that's what psychedelics are, is that transparency and hope.
Amazing. Brother, this has been so good. I have some questions for you that are sort of things I'm curious about that are pretty quick to answer. If you have a favorite book that everyone should read, do you have one?
I do. And that would be The Interior Castles by Saint Teresa of Avila. That is The Interior Castle. It is amazing.
Cool. Is there someone online famous that's resonating for you these days?
Oh, wow. I would have to say Michael Cohen. So Reverend Michael Cohen.
Okay, and guys, I will add this in the description so you guys can check it out. If you could send right now one message to every computer screen that just pops up on their screen, what would the message be for them? Everyone in the world. You have a chance to have a one-liner, two-liner.
It's not long, but I would say something that I needed to hear in my life, which is, you belong.
Okay, and how does silence, how important is silence in your world?
Silence is everything in my world. So I always say to people, when you say nothing, you hear everything. And that's what silence is all about. When you say nothing, you hear everything that you could imagine. And it's hard for people to understand that because we feel that we need to have an answer, we need to say something to get something, we need to do something to get something. Silence is key because when we find ourselves in pure silence, all the questions that we have will be answered.
So in the spirit of transparency and honesty that I felt was really a big part of this interview, is there anything you would like to promote?
Oh, yeah, it's hard for me to promote because, so I would say the one thing that I would want to present or promote is not necessarily something that I'm doing, but something that we all do. And that is to be present with everyone that we can. Just know that the skills that you have in life, the things that you know, the experiences that you have experienced can be a life-changing experience for someone in need. You may not think that your skills could change the world for someone, but that's the wrong thought to have. Just know that whatever you have inside, which is your heart, and whatever skills that you may have, can make a difference for someone. Don't try to change the world. Try to change the world for someone. And that's the best thing that I could promote.
Amazing. And Ross, how do people keep in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm most present on LinkedIn, which is just Ross Wilson, and then on Twitter, which is Chaplain Ross. Those are the two main places that you can communicate, message me, DM me. Yeah, that's where I'm pretty much all the time.
Okay. I think that hits everything for me. Thank you so
Amazing.
much, Ross. It was a pleasure
always
and an honor to have you on the show. My first show, actually.
Oh, right on. I'm honored.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
My first guest. And that's it. Any final words?
No, I just want to say thank you. I admire you greatly for the work that you've done when we first met to what you're doing now. Your life, your journey, your experiences is so wonderful to see. It gives such hope that there is ways of living life in a beautiful way. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.